Welcome back. One of my recent commenters on my YouTube channel suggested making a video how to solve puzzles or what kinds of things I think about when solving puzzles as a way to help other people. And I have a few tips that might help. They've been helping me. Some things I've learned from other people watching videos on YouTube, and some things that I've learned just from doing the puzzles myself and kind of taken to heart. The number one thing that I would say to somebody who's starting out solving puzzles is take your time. As you can see, I have a puzzle on the screen right now, and I'm not clicking anything. Yes, you will get slightly more rating points if you solve it in a certain amount of time. But for me, it's not necessarily about getting a high puzzle score. It's about understanding what the puzzle is about and making sure I get it right. Even though now I have unlimited puzzles, many of you probably are free members on chess.com, so you might be limited to 3 puzzles a day. Or if you're a gold member, I think you're limited to 25 puzzles a day. So you wouldn't want to just waste those few tries, those limited tries, on just running through 25 puzzles, because you don't get 25 correct ones. You just get 25 total. So if you miss half of them because you're hurrying, then I think you've missed some opportunities. So number one, I would say take your time. This puzzle is sitting here waiting for me to move. And I think on rated puzzles, even if you wait a long time, I think you still will get at least 5 points if you get it correct. Now, if you get it quickly, like if you just see the answer, like on this one, I saw the answer as soon as I opened it, you'll get more points. Depending on the rating of the puzzle and your puzzle rating, I think you can get as many as like 17, 15 points, something like that. But anyway, the second thing I would say that I've learned is to realize that unlike positions in a game, the position at the opening of a puzzle, you have an advantage. I think 99.9% of these are a place in which the opponent has just blundered, or you've had an advantage, and you have an advantage at this point. You have winning moves. I think I might have seen one, and it might have been on Lichess, where the solution to the puzzle was actually the only move that draws, and all other moves lose. But the great majority of puzzles, when you see the opening position after the opponent's move gets made by the computer, you have an advantage. You have winning moves. So think about that. Unlike in game positions where you try to evaluate during a game, am I winning? Is the opponent winning? Whose position is better? In a puzzle, you know that you always have, at least rated by Stockfish, a better position. You have a chance to either checkmate or win material, or successfully defend against an attack, something. Third thing, there's always a best move. And in here, there's clearly one move that wins on the puzzle you see on your screen right now. Whereas in a game, there are often several moves that have about the same computer evaluation, whether they're developing moves or positional shifting moves, moves that defend pieces, moves that get pieces out of danger, moves that get your king to safety, and sometimes 3 or 4 of those moves will all carry about the same amount of advantage if you're in a winning position, or if you're in a relatively equal position. Sometimes 4 or 5 moves, different pieces, will maintain that equality. If you're in a losing position, sometimes all the several different moves would maintain the same amount of disadvantage. But in a puzzle, there's always one move, and one move only, that Stockfish, the computer, evaluates as a winning move, or by far better than all the others. And the third thing is how I find the best move. And what I do is I look for 3 things, which I mention often in my other puzzle videos. I look for checks, captures, and threats. Not just me against the opponent, but them against me. Do I have pieces in danger? Like right now on the board, this knight is attacking my queen, so I have a piece in danger. And that is the only defender of this pawn, which is in danger of being attacked by this queen, where my king is back here behind it. But I also notice that I have checks against the opponent. For example, I have this check, moving the bishop to d6, puts the opponent's king in check. I have checks with my queen here, here, and here. Okay, now once you notice that you do have checks, the next thing is to evaluate which ones are better. And same thing with captures. If you can't find any checks or any good checks on the board, then you would look for captures. And if you have multiples, you determine which ones would be best. Are they even trades? If you capture that piece, Can the opponent then capture one of yours or capture back? And you follow out all the lines. And sometimes there aren't any good captures or checks on the board, and then you look for threats. Can I threaten a capture? Can I threaten checkmate and force the opponent to respond in some way? Or maybe they can't defend against that threat. But usually, especially in lower rated puzzles, which I've intentionally chosen a lower rated puzzle here, usually it's checkmate in just a few moves. And so here, of those several checks that I just showed, the bishop is a possible check, and I have queen checks on these 3 squares guarded by the rook at the back. Now, we know if you move here, the queen can capture, and we know if we check down here, the rook can capture. But it looks like if we check right there on d7, none of black's pieces can capture back. The king can't capture because our queen will be guarded by our rook, and the king has nowhere to go because all of these squares are covered by our queen once it gets there. So that's checkmate. And as you saw, number 1, I took my time. Number 2, I realized before I even looked at where the pieces were, I know because it's a puzzle that it's a position in which I have an advantage. Number 3, I know that there is one best move. Unlike the game positions where there might be many best moves, in these there will always be one best move, one that's better than the others. I'm going to click next and look at another puzzle. This is also a made in one because I selected a specific category for this video. Here, first thing, again, we look for checks, and I know that I have checks, and I know that one check is going to be better than the rest. For example, I have a check here, but I'm not convinced that's a good check. Number 1, this knight could capture that rook, or their rook could block my check. What other checks do I have? I have a check with my bishop right here on f5, but in that case the king could capture the bishop, the rook could capture the bishop. Another check I have is knight to f4 check, but in that case it looks like the king could move out of check, or again the rook could capture the checking piece. So we look, are there any other checks? And in this case, there is another check. That square is guarded by my knight, and it's not attacked by any of the opponent's pieces. And then you wonder, how would they respond to that check? They won't be able to move out of check. Those spots would be covered by the same rook that's giving check. And that spot is guarded by our knight, as we mentioned. The knight is guarded by the bishop. That rook from right there would also be guarding these 2 squares. This square is taken up by the opponent's pawn, so they can't move there. And this square is guarded by our bishop, and this square is guarded by our knight. So we know that moving there will be checkmate. Okay, so again, or do I need to do it again? Know that you can take your time. You get slightly fewer points, but that's okay because you want to get it right. Know that you have a good advantageous position. Know that there is one move that's best, unlike in games. Look for checks, captures, threats. If you find a check, evaluate it. Decide what the opponent could do. If there are multiple checks, see which one is more forcing, which one only allows one response by the opponent and has a good follow-up. Same thing with captures, and if you don't have good checks or good captures, you look for threats. Can I threaten a capture? Can I threaten a check? And I think most of all, have fun with it, and remember your goal, whatever your goal is. If your goal is a high puzzle rating, go for it. If your goal is to get better at chess, I suggest following these tips and taking your time. Thank you for watching.